Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 13 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Haft. You can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It is Mark Henry Jr. You can follow him on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I've come around a little bit after our last show when we were down in the dumps, but we're like Jalen Hurts said, you got to flush it down. So we're here to talk some football. I'm actually more excited to talk about the rest of the NFL than I am the Eagles. I guess maybe that's just going to be the progression of this season, but we'll see. I'm already kind of keeping an eye on the NFL draft. So I think that'll be part of my final thoughts. So let's talk some birds.
All right, let's do it. Well, we've got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're going to be previewing all of the Week 4 storylines, with the obvious exception of last night's game, to get you guys ready for the games. Before we get to that, though, this podcast is going out live on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. So drop us a comment down below. We love to be able to interact with you guys on these live shows, but it's also on Apple Podcasts. So for those of you listening later, please follow, rate, review. It really does help us out. And so, Mark, let's just get into it. The injury report, it grows longer every week for this Eagles-Chiefs game. Jordan Mailata was out of practice, and Lane Johnson was out of practice as well with the ankle injury. Again, I remember last year Lane was asked about the ankle thing, and he was asked if this was just something that was going to be the rest of his career, and he said, likely it would. And I think we're seeing that. But then you have Landon Dickerson and Jason Kelce were both limited as well. I think the expectation is that they play. But some good news, although it's not in the trenches, is that Rodney McLeod was a full participant in practice. So the Eagles may be getting a big boost to their safety room. Flip it over to the Chiefs side. Orlando Brown, Frank Clark, and Chris Jones were all limited. And I don't have a clear indication of whether we can expect to see any of them on Sunday yet.
Yeah, I mean, McLeod, my thoughts there would be, we're getting a little deeper, and it's not exactly an easy task for him to step in his first game in a long time and play against the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and I'm sure he'll have to deal with both of those guys. So definitely not something to step in and your first game in a long time. It's not an easing in process for McLeod.
Yeah, not at all. It's definitely a much-needed boost, especially with Kevon Wallace headed to IR. So, the Eagles, it's like we get one safety back and we lose another one. But it looks like, we'll have our projected starters at least when the game starts. So, my concern, though, is on the trenches. We look at the offensive line. It was supposed to be one of the strengths, and indeed it should be if it could ever stay healthy. But you've got Brandon Brooks out. You've got Jordan Mailata is likely out, although Andre Dillard looked better than expected. Although, as we broke down before the game, it was a favorable matchup for him. Now Isaac Seumalo's out. So you have Landon Dickerson, who's been one of the worst offensive guards in the league over the last 2 weeks. He's going to be one of the starters. They activated Jack Driscoll. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's Nate Herbig. I don't really know. Do you have any idea what direction you think the Eagles will go here?
I figure Herbig because he probably has more experience, but I no idea.
To me, it makes sense that you would plug Herbig in at right guard because that's where he was playing last year for Brooks, and then kick Dickerson over to left guard, which is a little more where he's familiar with. And now that Seumalo is done for the year, he can play there the rest of the year. So you expect Brooks to be back. I think it makes sense to me to start working him in over there. So that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah, I think at this point, Jason Kelce is the most important player on the team to stay healthy. We need to keep at least that consistency at the center position so we don't have to bounce Dickerson inside. And then it's the same thing as last year. But we're still already a mess. Brooks is gone for who knows how long. Obviously, Seumalo's gone for the whole year. Lane's always a concern. And Mailata, do we know when we expect him back? If he's not back this week, is he going to play next week? Who knows?
Yeah,
we can go down a long laundry list of concerns, but it all kind of points to this being potentially a pretty dark Sunday, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've got the Rock, Paper, Scissors podcast chiming in on YouTube, says, I still have a lot of faith in this team, but they've got a lot to show and still have a long ways to go. And yeah, I mean, we kind of expected, had week one not happened the way it did, I don't think we would be as down on this team, because in the offseason we knew like this was going to be a transition year. And, the expectation should not have been to go be a 10-win team. But then week one happens and expectations get high. And, we talked about on the week 3 review show that, the Eagles just kind of are what we thought they were. And it's going to be a work in progress this year. It's just going to be important to evaluate these guys, evaluate Jalen Hurts, evaluate Nick Sirianni. And while we're talking about Nick Sirianni, the Eagle, he said afterwards, the Eagles' game plan to beat Dallas was to win in a shootout. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, but that's what he thought. And hopefully he has seen the foolishness of that plan, and we don't come in with the same idea against the explosive Chiefs offense. What do you think? How do you think you attack the Chiefs here and try to make this a game?
Well, I think we're going to see runs early. Like, even if he wants to, even if he doesn't want to, I think we're going to see runs early just to kind of quell the public narrative and to kind of slow that down. And maybe that's dumb, but it'll probably turn into a game script where we have to throw a lot and we probably won't end up running all that much. And hopefully, you see a lot better things out of Jalen Hurts, because we said it last week that the Dallas defense was vulnerable. Well, this Kansas City defense is extremely, extremely vulnerable. I mean, Justin Herbert put up over 30. Lamar put up over 30. I can't seem to remember who they played in week 1, but I believe it was the Browns. Oh, they put up a ton of points too. So yeah, I believe they're like bottom 3 in almost every statistical category in terms of scoring defense and in terms of pass and run. Like, they are not good at any level of the defense. They're starting to look like those Chiefs defenses pre-Spagnuolo coming in. I think the DC back then was Sutton, and it was absolutely terrible every single year. And that was what was holding the Chiefs back, and might be what's holding the Chiefs back this year. Now, can we take advantage of that with our entire offensive line hurt and maybe, inexperienced novice play caller who doesn't know what to do once he gets down? I don't know. But, the most important thing is going to have to be getting up on Kansas City early. It's not rocket science to know that coming from behind against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs is not easy. That's why everyone was so shocked when Lamar and the Ravens were able to do it. The way you beat Kansas City is to get up and then pound the rock and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, keep the Chiefs on the sidelines for as long as you can offensively. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I have absolutely no faith, which probably means that, this will be a little bit, maybe we'll win the game. Who knows? But I am coming in with very little expectations. I just hope that Jalen Hurts looks good. Honestly, that's all that I hope for in this game against this vulnerable defense, and especially in the secondary, where we can absolutely attack them in the secondary if we, call the right plays. If Devonta Smith is used in the right forms, if we get Dallas Goedert open in the short to intermediate routes, there's a ton of things that they can do that they haven't been able to do. But a lot of it also is Jalen Hurts has to make the throws. And I mean, you had a couple videos on YouTube and Twitter where it breaks it down, where maybe necessarily the play calling isn't the issue 100% of the time. Maybe it was just an outright terrible game from Jalen Hurts, and there really is no sugarcoating how bad that performance was from Hurts. So hopefully that throw to Rager, that's a pick that's way underthrown. Hopefully you make a better throw on that type of situation in this game. That obviously the pick 6, hopefully you don't throw that ball in this game. So it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts, just like we've said about this season. The season comes down to evaluating Jalen Hurts. The most important thing in this game is seeing how Jalen Hurts attacks yet another vulnerable defense, and it didn't work out last time. So hopefully it's better results.
Yeah, you mentioned how bad the Chiefs defense is. They've got they have the worst run defense in the league. You can go look at about any stat you want to: yards allowed, yards per carry, rushing touchdowns, first down percentage. Like, they're 31st or 32nd in nearly all of them. And so this is a team you should be able to run the ball on. But again, so are the Cowboys, and that's just not where the game went. You should also be able to throw the ball in the Chiefs. This is a bad defense. And so, if we go into 2 straight games against really bad defenses and make them look good, you've got to have some concerns there. Rock, Paper, Scissors chimes in again on YouTube, asks, what's your take on always being in the shotgun? I'd like to see more under center single back sets and run the ball to set up play action, getting tired of RPOs. What do you think on that, Mark?
Well, I understand being tired of RPOs because it's not really an R if you don't run the ball. It becomes a P. It's just you can say it's an RPO, and Nick Sirianni can say in his press conferences that they actually count the passes in an RPO as a run. But when you don't run the ball, it doesn't really make sense to run as many RPOs. But I'll kind of defer to Shane on the whole what he thinks about the single back to shotgun situation. I think that's just personal preference on a coach. And until I see us really mishandle some shotgun snaps, maybe my opinion would change. But I'll defer to Shane on what he thinks on that scheme wise.
I mean, I think I tweeted out earlier this year, I think it was like a 3rd and 2 or 3 that we were under center. And I said, I just hate being under center on 3rd. And I mean, unless it's a QB sneak situation, because it takes away that opportunity to, read that defensive end and give it or keep it. It takes away that read option. And so I feel like when you're under center, you don't have to account for the quarterback as much in the running game like you do out of the shotgun. Now, to the point on the RPOs, the problem with being so RPO heavy is you're letting the defense dictate what you do. And so, if the Chiefs are going to, let's just use the Chiefs as an example. If the Chiefs are going to, call RPOs for half of their plays, well, the Eagles should go light box count and make Patrick Mahomes hand the ball off because you're taking the ball out of his hand. And you could see teams do the same thing. Jalen Hurts is struggling. If we just continue to do RPOs, they're going to stack the box and make Hurts keep it and throw the ball and just trust that they get to pick who has to try to beat him. And so that is one, negative, is that you're not dictating to the defense. You're letting them dictate to you. And it works in some situations, but when you get in a rut like that, and I don't have any problem with getting under center, but I do, primarily like seeing these mobile guys in the shotgun.
I have a random scheme question because it mentions play action there, and I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about it. The Rams ran no play action plays last week after basically their offense with Goff was entirely predicated on that, and they were also talking about how across the league this has turned into a trend where play action's way down. Maybe that is just as simple as the fact that the volume of running is way down. So that means that teams are going to try to trick teams with the play action far less because it's less convincing. I was just curious what your take was on play action, obviously on specifically the Rams eliminating play action and just across the NFL play action being down percentage wise.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be running the ball effectively for play action to work, but you do have to be willing to run the ball. And so, I mean, you saw the Cowboys not even biting on play action because we just weren't running. I think play action helps quarterbacks, but I think it's almost to a point now in the NFL where passing is so much more explosive that linebackers are really starting, good linebackers. So we don't see that much in Philly, but I think good linebackers are being taught to just, you play the pass until you're sure it's a run. We're no longer sucking up on play action. We're willing to give up, a half a second of reaction time to make sure we're not opening up that intermediate area of the field. So I think it's probably got less to do with just teams are running less and more to do with the fact that, linebackers are just starting to play the pass first. And so play action is moving them less. So you're just starting to see a drop in it.
It's also definitely a flex by Sean McVay being like, yo, I don't even need to do this anymore. I got Matthew Stafford. I don't have to deal with Jared Goff and try to disguise things to try to trick a defense. I can just call a play and he's going to throw it in the right spot and I don't have to be nervous about it.
Yeah, I feel like McVay is subtly and sometimes not so subtly like taking shots at Goff nearly every week.
For sure.
So yeah, so, Eagles, we need to come out. We need to be able to run the ball, but we've also got to be able to hit those downfield concepts. And, you can check out on YouTube, I broke down where the Eagles' early drive stalled. And spoiler alert, it wasn't because of the play calls. It was just because of lack of execution. But so we flip it to the defensive side of the ball here. And if you thought Dallas had weapons, Kansas City has the best quarterback, tight end, and wide receiver that are currently in the NFL. And you could maybe debate some of those, but you can't debate if I say top 1 or 2.
No, they're top 1.
So, the Eagles are going to have their work cut out for them. And I feel like this is what we've said every single week. But the advantage that you try to exploit in this game is that the Chiefs are starting a rookie center in Creed Humphrey. and a rookie right guard in Trey Smith. And so Javon Hargrave, he's going to have to keep up this crazy pace that he's been at, disrupting the quarterback. And, it'd be nice if Fletcher Cox would look like the best player on this team, much less like just the best player at his position on this team. So, if we could get some contribution from Cox here, if Hargrave can keep up that interior pressure, obviously Mahomes is great at creating out of structure, but that's all I've got for defense. We've got to be able to get some quick pressure up the middle on these two rookies.
And that's your boy, Creed Humphrey. How's he been? How's he been for Kansas City?
I think he's been fine. Smith, maybe not so much. But anytime you can get Javon Hargrave or Fletcher Cox on Creed Humphrey one-on-one, like that should be a definite win for them. So, I still like Creed. I think he'll hold his own, but, Cox and Hargrave are going to definitely have chances to get theirs.
So what's the over-under, or I should say, what quarter does Derek Barnett get his first penalty for roughing up Mahomes or taking a late hit or doing something dirty?
That's a good question. I feel like it's usually second half, after we're getting frustrated and he does something dumb, but maybe he surprises us. Maybe he does it earlier this game.
I think last week it was the first or second quarter, or early in the second quarter or something like that. He's been earlier and earlier.
At least that one, it was a stupid play, but at least it was just jumping off sides. It wasn't like blindsiding a guy after a play was over.
He's such a there's no sugarcoating it. He is such a dirty player. Like I just think he is an absolute dirty player, and it's a shame to have that on your team and have to hope that he doesn't do any after extracurricular stuff. But yeah,
I tweeted last week during the game. I tweeted or it might have been 2 weeks ago. I can't remember now. There's so many dumb Barnett plays I can't remember. But I tweeted the Jim Schwartz quote about Nigel Bradham back in the day when he was, had the whole deal with the Cabana boy or whatever in Florida and was facing suspension. And Schwartz said, if you do dumbass things long enough, eventually you'll be labeled a dumbass. And that's just, he could have said that about Derek Barnett. I'm just so sick of watching that guy play.
Yeah. Hopefully we see less and less of him, but then you'll see more and more of Kerrigan, who looks washed beyond belief at this point. So who knows? It's not going to be good. Like I just have a bad, the Chiefs are only a 7.5 point favorite in this game. I just don't see too many advantages. Darius Slay and Steven Nelson, good luck. I have a feeling they're going to be looking just as dumb as they were last week, where Darius Slay got straight up lost in the end zone 1 or 2 times, to be honest. So have fun covering Tyreek Hill. And then I don't even know what our plan of attack is going to be on Travis Kelce. I figure they're, you might try to use one of Nelson or Slay. You might try to use a safety. Who knows? Nothing's going to really work, in my opinion. Kelce had a bad game last week. I don't think he's having two bad games in a row.
Yeah, Kelce is the huge problem here. And obviously Hill's a big problem too, but the Eagles' weaknesses on defense, we don't have linebackers or safeties, and that's who's going to cover your tight ends. We made Blake Jarwin look like Travis Kelce last week. Well, Travis Kelce's here this week, and he's on my fantasy team, so I'm pretty pumped about that. I'm already claiming a win just because I think Travis Kelce might get 40 points for me.
He definitely could. He's going to be an absolute beast this week. I don't see, how we stop him. I really don't. So
give me your prediction in this one, Mark. What are you coming out with here?
What's the total in this game? I think it's around 52, 53. Let me pull that up real quick. 54.5. So I'll try to keep it around that. I'll go 38-17. 38-17 Chiefs. I don't think this is going to be close at any point in the game, really. Chiefs probably jump on us early, and we probably get some garbage time points going later on in the game. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully the offense puts up more points. That's all I really care about, honestly. I just want Jalen Hurts to look good. I just want to have something to build off of going into next week against Carolina, who I actually think that game's winnable. And just in terms of play style, I don't think they'll be able to attack us linebacker and safety wise quite as much as these last 2 opponents. So, and hopefully we'd be a little more healthy by then. So I just want something to feel good about going into next week after this Chiefs week, and not to feel the same way we felt after that Cowboys game.
Yeah, I had about the same thing. I had 38-14. I maybe we put up a garbage time touchdown. Maybe they surprise us and keep it close, but the Chiefs just have so much firepower. They're 1-2. They're going to be desperate for a win, and like you said, I really just want to see. I want to see the offense play well, even if it doesn't mean a ton of points. I want to see Hurts make better reads, and I just want to see. I want to have something that I can feel good about coming on to the post game podcast, other than just counting on our intro music to get me hyped up. So.
No, yeah, it all comes down to Hurts. I mean, just like the whole season. I mean, I think on this pod earlier this week, I was definitely trending towards he's definitely not the guy, but I wasn't saying definitely. I was saying probably. I've had a little bit of time to ruminate on that, and maybe it wasn't fair because I don't think he's had any other performance that you can point at and say this performance means he's not the guy. I really only think you have one, and then you are arguably have three good to great performances in his Atlanta game, in his New Orleans win last year, and also against Seattle last year. Those three games were so impressive that I looked through the numbers. I was kind of looking at Jalen Hurts' first 7 starts, and with those 3 games being so impressive and with the one game being so bad, it's hard for me to just say he's not the guy. Maybe it was a bit of an overreaction, but if you put up another game like you did last week against another vulnerable defense in Kansas City, then it's not an overreaction. It's just where we're at this point. So it's going to be important to see how Hurts plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and kick it around the league. Hopefully there's some more things to talk about here this week. So let's start off with Washington football team traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Atlanta has the worst pressure rate in the NFL right now, only getting pressure on 22.5% of their snaps. Now, your boy, Taylor Heineke, there is a marked difference when he is pressured and when he is not. When he is pressured, his interception rate is 8.7%. From a clean pocket, it's 1.2%. When he is pressured, his yards per attempt is 6.8 yards per attempt. And when he's not, it's 8.8 yards per attempt. So, maybe a chance for a kind of a get-right game for Heineke here, playing a team that just generates no pass rush. And then, we saw week 1 how awful the Atlanta offensive line is. Could also be a get-right game for the football team's pass rush.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything there. I mean, Heineke is definitely markedly different when he gets some pressure on him. He gets some happy feet, and he makes some crazy decisions. It seems like he's good for 1 to 2 crazy decisions a game. I'm a little higher on him than consensus, probably not a little, probably much higher on him than consensus, but just because I do think when they let him kind of loose and when they let him start moving around and they let him start going deep, that's when that offense really starts to click. And you saw that against New York, who doesn't have much of a pass rush. So like you said, with Atlanta not having much of a pass rush either, I would say Washington's going to win this game. I won't be betting on that, but I will be hammering the over 47. I believe it's at 47.5 now. I got it at 47 earlier this week. It's one of my 2 favorite bets of the weekend, and it's because of how susceptible Washington's D-backs looked in the first couple weeks. And I know Atlanta has had some lower scoring games, but this is still a team that gave up 40 plus to the Bucs, 32 to us, and Matt Ryan's always a candidate for a pick 6. So that's always good for the over. And I think this game's going to be close. And I always say this on my gambling podcast: close games breed overs. When you have both teams that are trying to score, that are worrying about the clock, when you're trying to put up points at the end of the game, you have the chance of overtime. That stuff's always good for overs. So I think this game goes comfortably over. I think we look at maybe like a 30-27 game here going either way, but I'll take Washington.
Yeah, I've got Washington in this one as well. Moving on to the Houston Texans traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Not a lot to say about this game. I mean, Houston is coming off of a long week, extra time to prepare, but Davis Mills is still under center and they don't have a defense. This is a 17-point spread, and honestly, that might be too small.
Yeah, I have another podcast that we do a competition at the end of the show where it's like we both pick 3 games, and he picked the Texans plus 17, and it's too many points. And I was like, I don't think it's enough because Davis Mills, I wouldn't touch Davis Mills against anybody. I don't know if you've seen that guy's neck. But there's no way you can have a good throwing motion when you have that big of a neck. I mean, that's Mike Glennon stuff right there. But in all reality, the Bills seem to finally be clicking. Last week, I think we talked about it on our review show earlier this week, but Josh Allen's down the field accuracy has kind of finally ticked up to where it was last year, and that seemed to be a problem for the first 2 weeks. I don't know if that was just new receivers and new offense or new, trying new stuff, or maybe it was just good defenses. But I don't think that you're getting a good defense out of the Houston Texans. I think Josh Allen will be raining deep balls to Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders and those guys, and I think they win big.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know that I'd take, the Bills minus 17. I don't like to bet on lines that big, but if I had to, that's where I'd lean. So next we have the Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. The Lions took the Ravens to the brink last week, and then they lost on the 66-yard field goal by Justin Tucker. The Bears are coming off of a game where that field goal covered more yardage than their offense did the whole game. So, I put out on Twitter earlier this week, I play a lot of Madden, and I'm pretty sure if you took like an above average Madden player and you let him call the plays instead of Matt Nagy, the Bears would be a better team. I just have no faith in him. And Detroit, they looked like they had something going last week. So, I mean, to me, I'm taking Detroit in this game. I just, Bears got to get rid of Nagy before he totally ruins Justin Fields.
And I think they will after they lose this game. I'm going with Detroit. This is a stay away from me just because I can't bet on Detroit here. Like I don't feel good enough about them. But if I had to pick the game, Detroit has, they had that comeback against San Fran. They should have beat Baltimore last week. So there are more good performances to feel, somewhat good about this Detroit team moving forward than there is with Chicago. And I think Chicago loses this game and fires Nagy. I don't know who gets appointed as, the head coach. Their DC's new. He's like a 37-year-old guy, and then their offensive coordinator is Bill Lazor, who's like a lifetime assistant. So they don't have anyone in there that's going to step in and do a better job, really, I think. But anyone will do a better job probably. So I think Detroit wins probably, but I wouldn't be betting this game.
I have a legit question for you. Did Mitch Trubisky make Matt Nagy look better than he really is?
It's hard. I always thought Trubisky was holding Nagy back and holding the Bears back, and maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was the other way around. Maybe Trubisky got a bad rap. The MVP, the Nickelodeon most valuable player from last wild card round.
Maybe the reason that every other play was mirrored curl flats wasn't because that's all that Mitch Trubisky can throw. Maybe that's just the creativity of Matt Nagy. What's funny though, last year is the offense was terrible and he got put under some pressure to give up play calling. And so he gave it over to Lazor and it got better down the stretch. They made it, to the playoff game. And then this offseason, he took it back. And I mean, you can see the results. Like at the very least, they should make him give up play calling.
Yeah, I don't even think it'll be that. I think it'll be firing. That fan base is ready to riot.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the Carolina Panthers at the Dallas Cowboys. Christian McCaffrey is out in this game for the Panthers. Carolina leads the NFL in sack rate at 13.9% and pressure rate at 49.5%. And so their defense has looked good. Now, they haven't played a lot of quality competition yet, but they're 3-0. Meanwhile, you've got Dallas is building some momentum with wins. They had good defensive performances against the Chargers and the aforementioned Eagles. What do you make of this one?
This isn't a game I've bet yet, but I'm trending towards really liking Dallas to win and cover this game. I think it's around 4.5 points. I just am not buying into Carolina. I don't know if Carolina can score with Dallas in a shootout. Maybe Matt Rule won't be coming in like Nick Sirianni trying to win in a shootout. But without Christian McCaffrey in this game, I really do think that's like the death knell for Carolina chances to win this game, especially in a shootout. If McCaffrey was in this game, this is a game I would not be touching. But I don't trust Chuba Hubbard to, they said they're going to run the exact same offense, and Hubbard will be just as big of a role as McCaffrey would be in their game plan, which seems wildly stupid to me. So we'll see what happens, but I don't love that quote, and maybe that's just gamesmanship, but I think Dallas wins this game handily.
So you're telling me that after you tried to trade me Chuba Hubbard in fantasy, you're on this podcast saying he's not going to be that good?
Well, you see that rumor there. I mean, hey, everyone should want him. Maybe I'm the idiot But I think that maybe they'll. I mean, hey, Najee Harris hasn't been good, but he's been great for fantasy because they've been giving him the ball 15 times on dump offs per game. But yeah, I think it could be the same thing with Hubbard this week.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, after you see what Dallas has done, the points that they've put up, every game, not just the Eagles game, they played with Tampa Bay. They had a down game offensively against the Chargers, but the defense played well. I think this is where Carolina's win streak ends, and I feel pretty good about the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, same here.
So moving on to the Indianapolis Colts at the Miami Dolphins. They play on Sunday. Doesn't matter what happens. The Eagles are the only winners out of this game. Hold potential first-round picks from both teams. Now, obviously, Eagles fans should be pulling for the Colts since their pick is not guaranteed to be a first. And let's just be honest, we don't want the Colts to be 0-9 and bench Carson Wentz for the snap count. So we need them to get a few wins. But Jacoby Brissett will get the start for Miami against a hobbled Carson Wentz. What do you have in this one?
This is the pick bowl, baby. This is the game of the year for Eagles fans. If you don't believe in the Eagles to turn it around and have a good season, this is the most important non-Eagles game of the year. I think Indy needs to win, like you laid out. We need that. You need the Colts to have a little bit of faith. You need them to get to 3-6, 3-5, so they're not completely out of it. And you also maybe the Texans and Jags are going to be bad. Like those teams are not going to compete in that division. So you're looking at that division. It's really just the Titans and Colts that have a chance. Obviously, the Titans are in a much better spot. Maybe the Titans win 12 games, and this isn't a conversation. But if the Titans lurk back and win 9-10 games, and they're only at 6-4 or 5-5, then the Colts will still feel like they have a chance. So maybe you root against the Titans, you root for the Colts a little bit to get to average. But I actually really like the Colts to win this game. It feels like a kitchen sink game for the Colts. I feel like a lot of people have tried to tell me how good Jacoby Brissett was in last week's game, but I think a long stretch in the middle of that game was unwatchable offense. And I don't think Jacoby Brissett's very good, and I think he holds on to the ball for far too long. I think Indy gets after him. Indy's defense has not really been fantastic. It hasn't been as good as it was last year, but it also hasn't been the problem with Indy. The problem is Carson Wentz hasn't scored what? I forget the streak now. It was
8 games. He hasn't put up 17 points.
Yeah, I think it changes this week, even against a pretty good defense, but it might not have to go past that. I think this is maybe it's a good under to look at. I haven't even really looked at the under, but I think, maybe this is a 21-17 win for Indy, a 21-14 win for Indy. I think it's a low scoring slog of a game where hopefully Indy can run the ball and, double sprained ankle Carson Wentz doesn't have to take too many hits.
Yeah. I think Miami wins this game. I'll be pulling for the Colts, obviously, for the reasons we laid out earlier, but I think Miami gets it done. Just to be honest, I trust Jacoby Brissett more than I trust Carson Wentz, and I think Brian Flores is a better coach than Frank Reich.
I agree.
So, and I think they've got better weapons to work with. I just don't think the Colts have much going in their favor here. But hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully the Colts win, or maybe we should just root for a tie. I could go for a tie as well.
Honestly, when you put it like that, you just made me feel nervous about my pick because this is like one of my bets this week and it's mainly just built out of ebb and flow, and it's mainly built out of the Colts or the Dolphins coming off a really disappointing overtime loss, and the Colts just feeling like, man, this season is a disaster if they lose this game. But when you break it down like position wise, there's not a lot to be excited about on the Colts. But I think their defense takes a step this week, and I think their defense steps up and wins them the game. But I agree completely on Flores over Reich. I'm not sure I agree on Brissett over Wentz. I think they're about the same in my head, and I still do think there is, hopefully another level for Wentz that I don't think is there for Brissett if he ever gets right or never figures it out. But we might be way past that at this point.
Yeah. And you've even got, even if you consider them pretty equivalent, one of them's got healthy ankles and the other doesn't. So at this moment in time, but yeah. We got Mr. Crockpot Media chiming in, says, "What's up, guys? Is this a Dibes burner account?"
I don't know.
Haven't seen that one. Either that or somebody has stolen our fearless leaders handle there. So
an added media.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him about that later. Moving on, we've got the Cleveland Browns at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are 1-2. but their 2 losses are by a combined 4 points. And so, the Browns defense, they looked amazing last week, which again probably says more about the Bears, but 9 sacks of Justin Fields. I'm excited to see this one, to see their defense that looked so good last week against this red hot Vikings offense. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that I've seen a lot of people like the over in, and I forgot to give this stat out, by the way. I think this is an interesting stat. Let me pull it up. It's about overs. So far in 2021, there's obviously been 48 games, and the NFL, it's 20-28 on the over. You look at outdoor games, it's 11-22 on the over. Indoor games are 9-6. So if you want to bet any unders, I would suggest maybe looking at outdoor unders, and you want to bet any overs, I was just looking at indoor overs. This one's just a little too high for me, but I could see this being a shootout with Cleveland and Minnesota. I mean, Cleveland's offense has been phenomenal every single week. I think both of these teams are averaging over 28 points per game. I think they're both up around that top 5 in the NFL marker. So these offenses have been just red hot. It's going to be a really fun game. I'm riding with the Browns. I think they're just a better team. I don't really have too many points to go off of there, but I would say the X factor in this game is going to be, what do the Browns have at receiver, and what do the Browns have weapon-wise beyond the running game? Because I think the way to attack Minnesota is to attack them through the air and to attack their weak secondary. And, the Browns' game plan is to run the ball, and the Browns' game plan is not to attack the secondary. And they are a team that still does a lot of play action. So it's going to be on Baker. It's going to be on Odell. I don't know if Jarvis is playing. It's going to be on, the Donovan Peoples-Jones and the other receivers on this team to take a step and to step up and, make some plays in a shootout here. I think the Browns will be able to do that. And this is also a Kevin Stefanski revenge game. Not really, because I don't know if they were just going to fire Zimmer and hire him, but Stefanski was the OC there for a long time, and a guy that apparently the Vikings really, really liked and kind of viewed as a future head coach, and were not happy when the Browns hired him away, I heard. So, and he's been fantastic. I think Stefanski's a top 10 coach in the NFL. I have not been impressed with Zimmer this year. I actually think that the Browns have a massive coaching advantage in this game. So I'm going with the Browns and Stefanski.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they've got the better coaching, and both teams have really good offenses, but the Browns have a serviceable to good defense, and the Vikings just don't have much on the defensive side of the ball. So I like the Browns to win this game, but I am excited to watch it. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's smart of you to touch on the defense there, because I didn't even touch on it. And that is the story with the Browns, obviously coming off of a week where they completely shut the Bears down. I do think a little bit of credit is maybe being taken away from them because of how bad Nagy did play calling and because of how bad Fields was. And I think some people kind of even forget who that game was against now. They just remember it as like the Bears got absolutely punked. And the Browns defense was fantastic. Myles Garrett was in the backfield the whole game. Denzel Ward, people yelled at me because I called Denzel Ward like a top 5 corner on Twitter, or a top 10 corner. Maybe that was too high. Maybe I'm too high on Denzel Ward. He's been really good so far to start this year, I'm pretty sure. So and then most importantly, and the guy that I am going to talk about every week with the Browns, as long as he's playing the way he's playing, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah put up like a 94 PFF last week. I mean, that's unheard of for a rookie in their 3rd game, making one of their first starts of their career. He's just a guy that should have went in the top 10, should have went in the top 15, and people talked themselves out of it, maybe due to size, maybe due to him being a tweener, maybe due to kind of the last couple guys like Isaiah Simmons, guys that have been drafted at that safety linebacker hybrid type. Maybe
Nate Gary,
Yeah. Maybe those guys haven't lived up in the first round, so people got afraid on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But JOK is just a football player. I don't care what position you put him at. I don't care how you use him. If you use him as a QB spy, if you use him to cover tight ends, if you use him to stop the run, it seems like he was doing everything and anything last week against Chicago. So that's a guy that's going to be a lot of fun to watch going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm biased though, Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, let's roll along here. We got 8 games left to cover. The New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. This is the true home opener for the Saints after their week 1 game was in Florida. The Saints beat the Patriots at Foxborough last week behind a dominant defensive performance, while the Giants found a way to lose to the Falcons. Blake Martinez is gone with the ACL injury now. And to be honest, I don't think, we talk every week with New Orleans, will good Jameis or bad Jameis show up this week? To be honest, I don't even think it matters. Bad Jameis couldn't blow this game against the Giants.
Don't challenge Jameis Winston like that, Shane. That is not. If any Saints fans are listening, block that out. We do not challenge Jameis Winston. We want the Saints to beat the Giants. We want the Giants at 0-4. But I don't know if bad Jameis is like he might be able to lose to anybody. But no, I think the Saints should win this game. They're going to be playing "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel because their roof was on fire last week. Hopefully they got that taken care of. That was a dumb joke, but that was pretty crazy. I don't know if you saw that video with the roof on fire at the Superdome. Yeah. I don't even know how does that happen. I didn't even hear I guess I didn't hear a follow up. I have no idea how the roof gets on fire. I know it's probably related to the hurricane, and I'm messed up to say anything, but it's absolutely crazy. That was one of the wildest videos I've ever seen. But yeah, in football terms, Saints win this game. Kamara gets going. I think Kamara has a huge game. I don't think the Giants have anyone without Martinez in there that can even have a hope in hell at sticking with Kamara. Like, I don't even know what you do if you're the Giants to try to use. I have no idea. So I think Kamara goes nuts, and that way you minimize what Jameis has to do. Short dump offs, hand it off. Just let Kamara take over. He's had an up and down season so far this year. I think he has a huge game, and Marquez Callaway started to pick it up last week. That was a guy that a lot of people had big expectations for coming into this year. He was kind of like a training camp warrior, like a fantasy riser darling this offseason. So he kind of stepped up last week. Let's see if he can continue doing that, because without Michael Thomas in there, they are sorely, sorely hurting for a receiver to step up into that wide receiver one role.
Yeah, absolutely. And Giants are going to 0-4. At some point, we're gonna have to start pulling for them to win, because I want Dave Gettleman to stay there forever, and Joe Judge. But anyways, we won't turn this into a Giants hate podcast. We want Giants fans to listen to. So rolling on to the Tennessee Titans at the New York Jets. Now, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Caleb Farley are all out for this game. I'm not sure it matters. The Jets' point differential on the year is -50. That's through 3 games, folks. Zach Wilson has been sacked 15 times, and he's tossed 7 interceptions. He has not thrown a touchdown since the season opener. And even with those guys out, if this game's even close, I feel like the Titans should be embarrassed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I actually bet Titans -6, and then with that news, I cashed out. I probably will end up buying in again and betting them again. I'm hoping the line moves down a little bit, but I think Tennessee should absolutely win this game no matter what. And I think that maybe they're holding out those guys as a precaution, knowing that this should be an easy win, and knowing that even if they lose, they're like we kind of laid out earlier, they're in a really easy division. It looks like Tennessee is going to have a freeway to get to the playoffs this year and to win that division and get a home game, which that's the way it breaks out sometimes. So, I think Tennessee should still absolutely win this game. They have a lot of concerns in the O-line, and obviously they're not going to have a lot to throw to for Tannehill. This is just going to be like give the ball to Derrick Henry and get out of the way, even if they have 9 dudes in the box. You're going to have to find creative ways to get the ball to Derrick Henry, who's been catching the ball. So maybe you use him as a receiver. Who knows? But, the Jets are a train wreck. I know we've trashed Joe Douglas like a couple times. Last week was just an abomination to football, and every week has been. And I know that I'm not one to say, let's call it quits on rookie quarterbacks and let's kill rookie quarterbacks or rookie coaches or young GMs. But, Robert Saleh, people were really excited about. It doesn't even seem like this team is fighting that hard for him. Zach Wilson, this is a guy that people thought was better than Fields, Lance, Mac Jones, whoever you like. This guy went second in the draft, and me and you didn't really understand that at the time. Me and you were not high on Wilson, and he has not given me any reason to change that evaluation. In fact, it's probably just strengthened every kind of concern I had about him, and every concern I had about him being, NFL ready, which I think we all agreed that coming out of BYU and with the lack of experience he had, he was maybe the least ready guy of all these guys. And he's the guy that they kind of threw to the fire the most behind the worst O-line. So just an absolute train wreck over there in New York. I don't know if they win a game for a month or two. Maybe who knows what happens down the stretch, but this is a mess. This is the worst team in football, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Rolling along here, the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. The Cardinals were red hot. They came back down to earth a little bit against the Jags. I mean, they still get the win here, but the Rams just seem to be firing on all cylinders. This is a key game in the division, a very tough division that honestly, it's possible with the expanded playoff format. You could see all 4 teams in the playoffs, and I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. But this is a huge divisional game, and it's a chance for the Cardinals to show that they are real. What do you think about this one?
To me, it's looking like Seattle's going to be the team that gets left out, which we'll get to with the next game. But Arizona's really impressed me. This line opened up at 6.5. It's actually moved down to 4. When it opened at 6.5, I was pretty interested in Arizona. I was really giving them the side eye, even though McVay has really, really, really owned Cliff Kingsbury so far in the NFL. So that's something to be concerned about. But I'm not going to touch this game. I think I'll say the Rams win just because I think the Rams are the best team in football. But this definitely does seem like a letdown spot for the Rams potentially, coming off of a huge game last week against Tampa Bay. But it's a division game, so you'd hope that McVay and the guys would still get up for it. They still have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Last time I checked, those are 2 top 3 defensive players in football, in my opinion. So I'll go with the Rams almost every week, I'm sure, on this podcast, even when I actually do think they're pretty vulnerable this week. But, I'll take the Rams to win every week.
Yeah, they're playing better than anybody right now, and they're at home. And so, I'll give them the edge on that one. If it was in Arizona, I might get crazy here, but I'm going to stick with the Rams.
Agreed.
So, moving on to the other divisional game, you've got Seattle traveling to San Francisco. 49ers should be 3-0, but they blew it against Green Bay on Monday. Was that Sunday night? Monday? I can't remember now.
Sunday night.
I was going to say it was one of the primetime night games. Blew that against Green Bay, but the Seahawks defense is a real problem. And so for me, this comes down to you've got Lockett and Metcalf going against the injured secondary of the 49ers. The 49ers are a better all-around team, but the injuries in that secondary, you could make an argument that Seattle could win this game, but even with the injuries in the 49ers secondary, I think the 49ers defense is still at least as good as the Seahawks defense. And so for me, I'm taking the 49ers at home as long as Jimmy G doesn't come out and lay an egg.
Yeah, I like the 49ers. This is another one kind of like Dallas, a game that I initially thought was a stay away. I'm kind of trending towards liking San Fran more and more as the week goes along here. I'm kind of having visions of this Seattle season going down in flames a little bit with those games that they should have won. It feels like both of the games that they've lost, they had immense opportunities to win. I know you were not happy after last week when they scored 17 right away and then couldn't score again for your team total. So it seems like that happens to Seattle a lot. It happened to them a lot last year. They get off to these hot starts and they just drop off a cliff. And it's crazy. And they lose games they're supposed to win all the time. And this could be a game where maybe they outperform them the whole game, but a couple things here and there. Shanahan outcoaches Carroll, and we're looking at a 49ers win. And I was really impressed with Jimmy G last week when he led that drive down the field that people would remember if Green Bay didn't then go down and lead another drive to win the game. I was shocked that Jimmy G led that drive and that San Fran was able to score. And I think we touched on that, but that was shocking to me, and that was really impressive to me out of San Fran more than anything. That loss to Green Bay was much more impressive than the win over the Eagles, where they probably should have lost. They probably got outplayed. So I'm talking myself into wanting to bet San Fran, actually. But I like San Fran to win the game.
Yeah, same here. Mr. Crockpot chiming in says, pop quiz, hot shot. I'm assuming this is a speed reference, and if so, I like it. Eagles are on the clock, and Thibodeau and Hamilton are on the board. Which prospect should the Eagles take? Hamilton, hands down. We have not had ace. We have to have somebody in our secondary. So, I mean, obviously, I'd have to shake out, positional value. Thibodeau plays a better, more important position, premium position. I'd have to see how the draft depth stacks up, but I am desperate for this team to take a playmaker in the secondary.
I'll take either, man. I'll take either, Mr. Crockpot. I'll take either dives. Like, Kyle Hamilton might be in a more position of need for us. Kayvon Thibodeau might be in a more, like you said, premium position in the NFL. So where does that shake out? It probably shakes out even. So you just probably have to decide who you like better as a prospect. I think they're both absolute studs. Like if there's any way we can trade all of our picks to get both of them, oh my God, we don't need a quarterback. Let me go out there and play quarterback with those guys on defense. But I absolutely love both those guys. Thibodeau could be just another one of the Bosa's and Chase Young, like these kind of that same mold of pass rusher, and I think he's a guy that can absolutely change a game right away. And we've seen more so recently that a lot of these DNs have been able to come in and play right away and make a difference. I mean, Odafe Owe in Baltimore has been fantastic out of Penn State, their first rounder this year. And then Gregory Rousseau has been fantastic. There's another one I'm blanking on, another pass rusher that went this year that's been killing it as a rookie. I'm blanking on the name. Every podcast I've done this week, I've forgotten one name when I've been talking about something. Like I did a Phillies podcast, I forgot something. I'm always forgetting one name, but the rookie DNs have been really, really good. So Kayvon Thibodeau could be a guy that comes in and transforms your defense right away with pressure. Kyle Hamilton could be a guy that comes in on day one and transforms your defense with leadership and instincts and technique. The play he made where he came across the entire field just because he saw a quarterback moving in one direction, he abandoned his guy knowing that he was basically out of the play and went and got the ball. He went and got a pick on the sideline where he was on the other hash of the field. That's just instincts you can't teach. That's Ed Reed stuff. So I would be absolutely ecstatic with either of those guys. So in my non-answer, I'll say Hamilton because he went to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I figured that's where you'd end up. I can tell you for sure how he's taken the lineman, though, 100 times out of 100.
And that'd be fine. Thibodeau is he's such an athletic freak.
Yeah. So, all right, 4 games left. Let's rapid fire these here. We've got the Baltimore Ravens at the Denver Broncos. Baltimore is the underdog to the Broncos. Think about that. But the Ravens have just been so hard to predict this year. Like, their game against the Raiders, the Chiefs, they've just been so up and down. Ultimately, it's the first actual game for the Broncos, who are 3-0 against opponents who are combined 0-9. So it's the first game they're going to play against a team that even has a win. Denver's got a great defense. Baltimore has nothing except Lamar Jackson on offense. And yet, we've talked about it time and time again. I trust that guy. I'm taking Lamar. And so I think Baltimore wins this game at Denver, but it's a big test for Denver and their defense.
Well, I think I pulled it out before on the pod, but it's sitting right here from whenever the last time it was. And it's a Lamar Louisville jersey. I'm going with Lamar. My best bet this week. This is a 10-unit play for me. It's my biggest NFL play of the season. I don't care if it's a trap. I don't care if it's a sucker bet. I don't care if everyone's going to be on Baltimore. I'll take Lamar. Denver's a bunch of frauds. I don't buy in this at all. Even if I am, a Teddy Truther, a Teddy. I don't want to use the one nickname. This is a family show. A Teddy covers guy. So I think Teddy is a very good quarterback. Not going to be enough against Baltimore this week. I know that. I know they didn't look good against Detroit, and I think that that's kind of throwing off everyone. And this is one of those situations where I don't know if you'll follow me here, but everyone says that the Ravens are public. So it turns into everyone starts betting the Broncos. So it turns into the Broncos actually being the public team because everyone's saying the Ravens are public. It's a whodunit situation of gambling that, sicko gamblers like me deal with on a week-to-week basis trying to figure out where a line's moving. But the line is moving in the Ravens' direction, but there has been just as many bets on Denver. So that makes me think the sharp money's on Baltimore. So it makes me feel good about it still. The team's not very good. The Ravens are not very good. I mean, we've talked time and time again what they've done for those receivers, for Lamar. Having no receivers for him to get the ball to is just a crime, and what's happened to their running backs is insane. But Lamar Jackson's special. He's a top 5 player in this league, maybe, but he's definitely a top 5 quarterback, and I think they win this game because of him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Green Bay Packers. Week 1 looks like an anomaly for both teams, between the Packers just laying an egg against the Saints, Pittsburgh beating the Bills. The Steelers defense is going to have to dominate the Packers for their offense to keep up. And I just don't see it. The Steelers haven't had a losing season in 17 years, which is the longest streak in the NFL. The next closest is 9 years, so they're almost double. That streak's going to be broken this year. I just don't see the Steelers picking up many wins. with the state of their offensive line, with the play of Ben Roethlisberger, I just don't see it. I think Green Bay wins this one pretty easy.
I agree, but I won't be taking this spread because Mike Tomlin's numbers as a big underdog, especially an underdog by more than a field goal, are just unbelievable. Like, just otherworldly against the spread numbers. So I'm not touching this from a gambling sense, but Green Bay should win this game. If they don't, then let's start asking questions about Green Bay, even with their 2 wins the last 2 weeks. But yeah, I think you said it perfectly. There may be no greater anomaly game the rest of the season than that Pittsburgh Week 1 performance against Buffalo. That definitely looks like it means nothing. But I don't have much to say here.
All right, keeping it going here. Tampa Bay at New England, the Tom Brady revenge game. I could care less about this storyline, but Tom Brady returns home angry at Bill Belichick, angry about losing last week. To me, what's more interesting in this game is that Mac Jones showed some chinks in the armor last week. And so, this could be a get-right game for a Tampa defense that honestly has been a lot worse than we expected. We thought Tampa was going to be really good, and they haven't been. But they are good against the run, and so this game is going to be on Mac Jones to have to try to go out-duel Tom Brady, one of the greatest that has ever played the game. And those words taste terrible coming out of my mouth. But I think Tampa Bay wins this one in Foxborough, and I think they probably win it pretty easily.
Yeah, I think Tampa rolls here. I've heard some people try to praise Mac Jones week after week after week and average line after average line after average line. And I just haven't seen a lot to be impressed with. And he's exactly what I like. He is who I thought he was, the Dennis Green. I think that, he is what he is. He's a vanilla quarterback who they don't trust to really unleash yet whatsoever. And I don't know how much that really is to unleash with Mac Jones. So I think that this is an easy win for Tampa.
All right, and on to the Monday night game. We have the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. The Raiders are 3-0. All 3 wins are over double-digit win teams last year. Their offense can be explosive. Derek Carr is on, an MVP sort of pace here. But the Chargers just beat the most explosive offense in the league in the Chiefs. And so what do you have in this one?
Chargers did a good job against the Cowboys offense too. So the Chargers defense has looked really, really good. I don't know if that's Brandon Staley coming in there and implementing his own scheme. And it seems like it really has worked. And the Chargers look like a contender. I'm going to go with the Raiders. I don't know why I'm doing it really. This is just like I don't know. They're the underdog. I feel like I'll end up betting them on Monday. I think the Raiders get to 4-0 here. I think they can continue surprising some people. The one thing I am concerned about is that the Raiders make the most big plays so far in the NFL this year, and the Chargers have done the best job in the NFL at limiting big plays, and they've done so against really good offenses. So that's going to be the deciding factor of this game if the Raiders are going to be able to make anything happen downfield with Henry Ruggs and with the other guys in that offense. But I'm going to go with the Raiders. This isn't one I'll be betting until Monday, probably. I say that now, but Monday night will come around and I'll end up wanting some action. So I'll take the Raiders.
I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I think, they played some closer games early in the year where there was some poor situational football, especially from Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was on point last week against the Chiefs, which again, it's the Chiefs defense, which has struggled. But overall, I like the Chargers offense. I really like Justin Herbert, and the Raiders have been good, but they've also played some really close games that they're fortunate to have come out of with wins. I don't think they're quite as good as their record shows. Still a good team, but I think the Chargers will win this one. But I think this is going to be just another great Monday Night Football game.
I agree. So after last week, me and Shane are tied up record-wise, by the way. So our only 2 disagreements this week were Indy, Miami. I've got the Colts, Shane's got the Dolphins, and then that Monday Night Football game where I've got the Raiders and Shane's got the Chargers. So those will be two big games for our little contest here.
That's an easy 2-0 for me. All right. Well, before we wrap this up and get out of here, Mark, do you have any final thoughts for us today?
Yeah. I think Let's look at the quarterback position. Jalen Hurts, people have asked some questions after last week. So if you're an Eagles fan who maybe doesn't watch a lot of college football, you're a casual college football fan, here are kind of the guys to keep an eye on the rest of the year. Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty, really, really fast, dual threat quarterback. Probably my favorite guy so far. I think he might be Shane's as well. He's playing UAB this weekend. That might sound like a cupcake game. UAB is actually pretty good. So that'll actually be a fun game. You have Sam Howell. I think he's like a carbon copy Baker Mayfield guy from UNC. He's not really playing a big game this weekend, and they've been a really disappointing team. So I think Howell's not someone you really have to keep that close of an eye on. You have Matt Corral, big game this weekend for Ole Miss, playing against Alabama. And this weekend will say a lot about Matt Corral. He's kind of risen into the first round as a first-round prospect. So I'm very interested to see what happens there. And then you have Carson Strong. Now, can the Eagles draft another quarterback named Carson from a non-Power 5 school? I don't know. But he plays for Nevada. I actually love Nevada this week, so that's going to be a game I have close eyes on, and I'll be evaluating Carson Strong pretty closely on Saturday when he plays Boise State on the blue turf. But then, most importantly, and getting to Shane's heart before we throw it back to his final thoughts, maybe he'll give a little breakdown. Spencer Rattler of Oklahoma, who plays Kansas State, who has beaten Oklahoma the last 2 years. I have a hot take. I think it continues this year. Kansas State pulls off an upset. I love them. Plus 11 and a half in this game. I have not loved what I've seen from Rattler, and I'll give Shane credit. Shane was the first guy after week 1 who was kind of speaking out against Rattler and didn't love what he's seen. I think he was at the game last week. So I'll pitch it over to Shane about Rattler in that Oklahoma game.
Yeah, I've got a buddy of mine from college that we try to go to a game every year, and we just have a personal rule. We don't go to Kansas State games because we went to 2 Kansas State games and OU lost both of them. So Kansas State always seems to have OU's number. I know I said after week 1 that Spencer Rattler's exactly what he was last year. He's got a lot of arm talent, and he's totally and utterly careless with the football. And I'm not talking like Brett Favre trying to trigger it into small windows. I'm talking just tossing the ball up on 9 routes into double coverage, throws you should just never make. I was at the game last week. There was a point in the game last week after he threw an interception that OU fans were chanting for the backup. And to be fair, the backup is really good. He got into the Western Carolina game, and it's Western Carolina, but he hit some bucket throws deep down the field. Think he's really good. I wasn't I didn't think this was a hugely strong quarterback class coming into the year, but I would have said Rattler, I guess, was the number 1 guy. I don't have him near that at this point in time. He's definitely, it's interesting. You look at all the Neil guys that are making money now, and it seems like they're all really struggling. So I don't know, but it's going to be a big game for Rattler, and a guy that really he's got all the swagger and confidence in the world, but he's going to have to back that up on the field. A guy that's kind of seeing his draft stock tumble down around him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But Willis has not had a great year. I think he's had some really good highlights, and there's a lot to be excited about. And you kind of don't worry about as much with him because it's at Liberty, so there's going to be some bumps along the road there. But with Howell and Rattler at the big schools that they're at, with the expectations they had, they have certainly hurt their draft stock. I will say guys like Carson Strong and guys like Matt Corral, actually not as much Carson Strong. He hasn't had a great year. Matt Corral is the one to watch, I guess, in terms of maybe this guy just continues to shoot up the rankings. Maybe this guy ends up being the number 1 pick. This wasn't a guy I had too many eyes on. This isn't a guy I've watched an absolute ton while thinking from an NFL evaluation standpoint that this was a guy. He's another guy who's pretty careless with the football. I think he threw 7 picks in a game last year. This is Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin really run an air it out offense. That'll be a fun game to keep track of. Ole Miss, Alabama. If he has a big game against Alabama, they pull off an upset in Tuscaloosa. Maybe that starts a Heisman campaign for Corral and a shot up the draft boards. And maybe this is a guy to get excited about. And I think he's got the measurables to get excited about. I just don't know if he's got it between the years.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on. And as we get into the off season, we'll be breaking down a lot of draft content for you guys on this podcast. So, don't fear, we won't go away when the season ends. We'll be keeping you guys up to date all through the offseason. For my final thoughts, I'm doing a YouTube series for the Painted Lines in a 32-man online Madden football league. And tonight at 9:15, at 8:15 Eastern time. I'll be live streaming on Twitch the Eagles Week 4 game against the Chiefs. So maybe a preview of how that game's going to go. I hope not, because I don't feel real confident. I'm playing pretty poorly right now, but that's okay. You can come hang out in the chat. We can chat Eagles, chat Madden. Just join us and hang out. And that's going to about do it for this episode. So thank you guys for joining us for episode 13 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure that you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. And so you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at _TPL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. _. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.